I'm Jo Wright, the Creative Director at Take Two. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, the traditional owners of the land where Take Two is based. Today, I'm speaking with Phong Chi Lai, an artist who listens deeply to cloth. Through improv patchwork quilts and soft sculptures, Phong follows intuition, resourcefulness, and the quiet stories stitched into discarded fabrics. Phong's journey through fashion and design and the influence of the G-Spend quilters are just some of the threads that come together. History, imagination, and memory are all woven into something new. Phong is a finalist in the 2025 Make Award, the biennial prize for innovation in Australian craft and design. He recently completed a residency at the Australian Tapestry Workshop, and you may have seen his textiles at QuiltCon or touring as part of that exhibition. Nonetheless, Phong is a prolific artist whose work is gaining recognition at a remarkable pace. This is a conversation where we stitched in and out and up and down, moving through themes of risk and renewal, cutting and mending, and the quiet beauty in transformation, both in cloth and in practice. If this conversation sparks your curiosity or your own creative impulse, we'd love for you to share it with friends and fellow makers so the inspiration can ripple outward. Let's begin. Hi, Phong. Thank you
Jo.
so much for joining us for this Friday Feature Artist interview. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me on board.
Oh, pleasure. I'm so excited to chat to you and learn more about your work. Can you give us some insight what your days consisted of so far today?
Today, I think I was just mentioning before, it's all the little tiny details. I'm just about to send off for work up to Sydney for an awards, for the Make Awards up at the Australian Design Centre. And it's all the finishing tiny details. Before I send anything off, I always go over with a fine tooth comb, basically. And it's, all these little detailed things that I'm kind of finishing off before I send the work. Slightly boring, but also very necessary in my case. I'm always scared that I'll send something off for whatever purpose, and I don't know, I think it comes from a making or producing shoes background.
Yeah.
And footwear background, where there's always that slight trepidation that whatever you're making or sending out will fall apart.
Yes, that makes so much. Okay, so backtracking a bit. Phong,
Yeah,
your
sorry.
background is in shoe design, but we're diving right in because that makes so much sense with you just would never want your shoes to fall apart. And so
No.
that makes sense that you have that feeling that you need to double check everything. So can you give us an idea of what some of those things you were doing, even though they may seem very granular? What are some of the things you do with your work just before it goes off for an
It also stems from my childhood as well, because my parents have clothing manufacturing, just a small clothing manufacturing factory in Adelaide, and they used to make us work, my siblings and I work in the factory during our school holidays, and our jobs would be to do all the snipping of the loose ends of the threads on garments before it gets turned inside out. So I'm always looking for loose threads on whether it's a quilted work or an embroidered work. Always looking for loose threads, making sure that they're actually stitched properly. I actually also kind of tug a little bit on the stitching as well to make sure that it's actually secure.
Yes, makes sense.
Just all these little more functional to make sure that it's actually made right, I guess. And I always get out the lint remover.
Maybe that should be our episode title today, is tugging on threads
Yeah.
and removing links with Phong Chi Lai. How about that?
That's good to me. It's the final thing before it leaves the studio.
Yeah,
Basically.
yes. Love it. Well, thank you again for joining and taking a step back. We've shown a few of your works in the introduction and described your practice, but we do have people who are just listening in, or people who are not familiar with your work. So I would love you to just describe your work in the simplest, even visual sense for people who are listening in.
So I make improv patchwork and quilts and soft sculptures, basically. Essentially, it's a very intuitive approach to making. I use natural dyes and upcycled textiles predominantly in my work. This stems from my previous work as well, working overseas in Vietnam and Kathmandu, working with natural dyes and natural fibers. And it also stems from a resourcefulness that I quite enjoy, and also my fashion background, I worked both in commercial fashion footwear and also my own independent label as well. So using upcycled textiles, just using whatever is available to me rather than me making conscious effort or choice to use. I actually find that a lot of art making and craft making, obviously, any type of making, a lot of people actually are very attuned to buying commercial.
Mm-hmm.
And also making sure that they have the right things that they need to make. I like to respond to I like to create by responding to the materials as opposed to actually having a vision in mind of what I want, what colorway I want. So a lot of it is very intuitive and a lot of it is improv. Sometimes it's some of my work, some of the quilted works, I use a lot of hand detail as well. It may seem a little haphazard in a way that's put together, whether it's been stitched. But at the same time, every piece has been considered in the process.
Yeah.
So it just may come out looking a lot more whimsical and spontaneous than it actually is.
I think there's, and as we progress through our chat, there is a cohesiveness to the look of your work in colour and form and style. And I'm thinking in my mind about even just some of the threads we've spoken about in the last few minutes of the fashion background and working for your parents, that there's something that perhaps has all come together in your art.
Absolutely.
It is now, which must be
yeah, it is really nice to be able to encompass. I mean, for me, I guess everything I've done in the past builds onto what I do in the present and also into the future as well. Whether it is fashion, whether it is working with my hands, making shoes, or working with my hands and making. At the end of the day, I actually call myself a maker. I prefer that anyway, just because, especially when I'm working with textiles as well, I like to be able to have it in my hands, to be able to see what properties it can hold and what I can actually do with it. I find it difficult nowadays to try and conceive an idea in my mind and then create it.
Yeah. And has that taken you a while to get to in your artistic practice? Because if you had sometimes I think about, and your positioning of a maker sort of, to me, in my mind, sits sort of somewhere between design, which is what you used to do, and art, which is perhaps where things have moved more recently. And with design, a lot of the time, or ideally, you have the idea, or at least the concept, a fairly clear path in mind of where you're going.
Absolutely.
With art, you can be more intuitive and work your way there through material. And these might be sweeping generalizations, but
No, I do agree. It is. I mean, my whole practice, I guess, intersects art, fashion, design, textiles, making, craft, DIY. It pretty much brings it all in.
Yeah.
And what I do enjoy is that, especially with textiles nowadays, anyway, there's a whole heap of it. I don't have to go searching for it. And it is so versatile as well.
Yeah.
It can be made into really functional. It can be used for art purposes. It can be used for craft purposes. There's just so many different iterations that you can actually use it, which I really quite enjoy.
And so with your childhood, spending school holidays working for your parents in the what was it, a textile factory, and you moved into fashion, Fong. So some people would go the opposite direction of that. What was it about fabric, textiles, fashion, footwear that drew you in? Is it the texture and the materiality? Is it
The
something?
tactility. Well, I was actually, I think I told you before, I was living in, so I studied marketing at uni. I went to London and I was working in fashion retail in London, and then I moved to Paris for, it's so cliched, for love. And I was studying French over there, but I was also, my partner at the time was the operations manager for Lulu de la Falaise, who was the, she's now passed, but who was one of the muses of Yves Saint Laurent. And so she was working with him in haute couture. She was doing his jewelry line. When haute couture closed down, she opened up her own ready-to-wear label. And so I had the opportunity to do a very informal internship, basically, there. And that was pretty much when I was like, so my parents with the factory, they actually did put me off by making us work there during the school holidays. But it wasn't until I realized that, wow, there's a world away. And it's a young person's kind of mentality as well, where you don't want to do the production side of things. You want to be more about the design and playing with the fabrics and coming up with ideas and solidifying them, and then getting someone else to make them. So there's a difference between the production side of it, and my parent, and they were doing production for at the time for Kmart and Target and Big W. So it's
mainstream, big box.
Yeah.
Yep.
And when I was in Paris, that was when it was like, oh wow, there's a completely different world in terms of design and fashion and what you can do with it. It wasn't the same, I guess, in Australia. And I don't know if you can ever compare the industries anyway. So it wasn't until that experience that I kind of went, oh, well, this is pretty interesting. And it was also over there just before I was about to leave. I was asked what I was doing. Like I was pretty happy to float around, basically. And it wasn't until then that it was like, oh, actually, I wouldn't mind doing studying footwear. And because of, I guess because of that experience and knowing that there's so much beauty in terms of design, that I wanted to do it myself. And I was just very fortunate that I came back to Australia, and there was actually a footwear course in Adelaide. That's where I'm from originally as well. And yeah, it just pretty much grew from that.
What kind of footwear were you designing when you had your own business?
Ready to wear. It was all handmade, women's footwear, but it's, I guess at the time it was very Melbourne, asymmetric, black, and very much in line with androgyny. It was a cross between, like, whatever I was designing was purely, this is something else that I've actually just clicked onto, is that I seem to do things for myself first.
Yeah.
I studied footwear because I wanted to make shoes for myself,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of luck that I was able to actually then turn it into a label. And so for that, it was, so I was designing for myself, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
You see
it
that
was nice that it
happen.
was
Yeah.
able to be translated into female styles as well and be able to.
Yeah. Quite often, I feel like that's a story I hear of a lot of designers starting out as they can't find what they want, so they
Yeah.
start making it themselves, and then their friends and family sort of cotton on and they build a bit of a following. Yeah, it's
In my
interesting.
case, I couldn't afford the shoes I wanted.
Well, there's that too. Yeah, there's that too. You sort of, and this is a bit of a segue into some imagery, because you still work in a three-dimensional form
Yes.
with soft sculptures. And I might show a few
Yeah.
images we have of those works. And if you're listening in, make sure you check the episode description, show notes, because we will link through to the images that we're showing here. But I might flick through a few of these images, Fong, and as we go, can you just describe what the works, how they're made, firstly, in a basic sense, and what some of the ideas are behind them, if I bring those up?
Yep.
So first we have a work called A Fabulous Nobody, and this is a recent work. Is that correct?
It is. This was for an exhibition at the beginning of this year. It was for an exhibition called Fashion Artists at a gallery in Melbourne for Melbourne Fashion Festival. I use these dolls. I mean, the soft sculpture dolls have had a life of their own, really. They started off as one thing, and now they've kind of morphed into creating character for me. This is a self-reflective kind of exercise, I guess, to be able to, they started off by me making quilts, but thinking of another way of extending the quilt from 2D to 3D. So I'm still using the same patchwork elements that I would in a quilt. You'll notice that the faces of these soft sculptures, it's actually the log cabin blocks,
Yep.
2 log cabin
Plastic
blocks.
quilting block. Yep.
Yeah, very traditional quilting block. And the bodies will be patchwork, basically. I do, and like I said, I do a lot of hand embroidery. My hand embroidery is more using utility stitches to be able to, well, not this one. After I just did that. I've started, yeah, I've started embroidery using a lot of floral embroidery, actually, just recently.
Yep.
I seem to, I don't know, I really enjoy it. For whatever reason, these are flannel flowers. This is Dear Dear, which was part of a collection that was for an art fair just recently.
Yep. I've got another one here with,
this is Moon. This is, they're all Australian native flowers. This is the Sturt Desert Pea, which is kind of a nod to South Australia, basically, for me, because that's where I grew up. So this is the collection that was at the art fair just very recently. And again, they start up. It's like creating these characters that I have in my head, or ideas that I have in my head. I haven't traveled for quite a while now, actually, and I'm still since we came back from Kathmandu in 2017. I haven't left Australia. Well, I've been to New Zealand, but I don't really count New Zealand as travel because that's where my partner's from. So it's family visiting. I don't know. I'm I'm always very drawn to these very far out. It's kind of like I create my own little world in
Yeah.
and stories in my own mind. It also draws back from childhood as well. I used to like. I'm not sure if you remember Care Bears and
Yes,
the
I
Cabbage
do.
Patch Dolls and things like that. Yeah, and that was part of my youth. Care Bears, Cabbage Patch Dolls, and this create back then it was about being able to create my own little world, and it's exactly the same now, actually, funnily enough.
Yeah.
So I can create, and I don't know, being able to then also use very traditional quilting and making elements
Mm.
with textiles to be able to, they bring joy to me actually when I create them, and it puts a smile on my face. I think it puts smiles on other people's faces as well.
Yeah.
Um, it's these characters, I guess, kind of elicit there's a joy and a wonder to them, and it's my way of kind of bringing joy and wonder to my own life.
Yeah.
Again, these are creating characters. I'm very much into seeing what I can do with a quilt, and extend it's an extension of the quilt basically.
Yeah.
Like, it's really great to have a quilt. Like, a quilt for me, it always kind of has been a utilitarian kind of thing: comfort, safety, home,
Mm.
and really quite domestic in that sense. And that's what I really like about them as well. um and it for me, it's kind of challenging myself. It's, at the end of the day, it's challenging myself more so than anything else to be able to come up with a different way of making a quilt. So it
Yeah.
ends up being a soft sculpture instead, creatures and animals and furniture.
I think they're incredible forms as well. And I don't want to draw too long a bow, but I think about your footwear um, background. I think this might sound strange. It takes a bravery to create a soft sculpture out of a quilt because you're pushing the seams, right?
Yes.
You're kind of testing the boundaries. Like a quilt is a flat thing. We make the sandwich. It will get beaten up if it gets used and loved over time. But a soft sculpture is a different thing. And I imagine the confidence that you bring to the soft sculptures comes from your footwear background. I don't know.
Oh,
Is
you might think there was confidence, but I'm pretty sure during
that
every doll that I make,
yeah,
I'm actually very hesitant to start because
right.
because of the amount of time that goes into actually making
Mhm.
one.
Yes.
Um, I'm always scared that there's a chance it will turn out ugly.
Yeah, yeah. I get
In
that.
which
Yeah.
case, I would have spent weeks and weeks on it. So
Yeah.
there's that level of fear with the dog, the creating character dog, the
Yep.
patchwork one. I was not 100% sure how it was going to turn out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there were definitely moments during its creation that I thought, oh gosh, I've just stuffed up a perfectly good quilt.
Mm,
Um, so
mm,
I don't know. I'm not sure if a lot of people, especially making quilts as well, it takes
yeah,
such a
yeah,
long time. Even if it's machine quilted, it's still so much time involved in producing one.
yeah,
There's always that element of, will this work?
yeah,
Will it look good at the end? Will I like it at the end? And I have definitely had moments where things will sit for a very long time. Actually, that dog started off as, I used to make um, a lot more functional quilted things,
hmm,
table placemats and tote bags and things like that. So I was using a lot more of a design thinking, I guess, in terms of making products with it. Got to a point where I was investing so much time and energy, even in one product,
yeah,
basically, um, that it just wasn't worth my while to do it at the end of the day. So I had placemats that I had already made, which then I thought, oh, maybe I'll put them all together and turn it into a quilt.
mm,
Made it into a quilt, and then I was like, oh, maybe if I just started to manipulate this quilt and stitch it together to create a form, what
mm-hmm,
would that do?
mm,
And then it's like, oh, okay, if I start to do that, what if I stuff it and then put a head on it?
mm,
So it's almost like a speculative kind of process where it's like, oh, what if I do this, or what if I do that? Um, so I don't know. I guess there's never a stage where I'm 100% certain that anything will actually work.
I think they look more effortless than the.
Well,
So
that's
how does it feel to create a quilt top and then cut into it to make the shape for the
well.
3 4? That would push me over. So I've made the top. I've made a very complex log cabin, and now I have to snip the shape, and there's no going back from that, right?
No, there's not. Um, the chair, I use the log cabin quite
Mm,
in terms of a foundational block quite a lot in an improv style. The chair, I kind of already knew that I was going to be creating. I wanted to create a chair from a patchwork chair that was, while it's actually fully functional, I don't recommend sitting on it. So there's kind of that element of it is a chair, but you can't sit on it actually. Um, I also, I guess there's a lot of thinking. There is a lot of thinking, although my work itself is to create the actual quilts and the quilt tops is very improv and very intuitive. There is still a lot of thinking time that goes into how something will be constructed and how it will be put together. That's probably why I call myself a maker
yeah,
as well, because there's the element of how are you actually going to produce what you have in your mind
mm,
into reality,
mm,
basically.
mm,
So it's a pretty, without being able to make whatever you have in your mind into reality, I would find it really, and that's one of the things I actually like about what I am able to do is kind of have a visualization of what I want in my mind to create, but then also have the skill sets and the ability to actually make it as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
Um, and I really, really enjoy it. So there, for the chair, even though it is a quilt top, I did have to think quite a lot in terms of its shape and the patterns to create that shape.
Yeah.
So it's not purely improv where it's just kind of comes together
Well, of
at
course.
that stage.
I guess you have the ability with your various experience to tap into as much intuition or as much
Yeah.
finally planning as you
Yes.
need to along the way, along the journey of making a piece. We could have a look at, because I'm quite interested to ask you about why quilting. Um, I'm an Australian, and I'm a keen quilter
Yeah.
myself, and we don't have that really strong generational tradition of quilting, where our grandparents and those before us for many generations, or I think in the US it's something like 1 in every 10 households,
Yeah.
possibly even more, have a quilter. Um, and you do take inspiration from these beautiful traditional quilt making ideas and blocks. So this is a
This
log
is
cabin. Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So what is
Um,
it about quilting as that foundational starting point, and here's another one to a detail of a
this
work
is
where you've
as
embellished,
well. Yeah.
yeah, on top of a log cabin. What is it about quilting?
In all honesty, I wasn't really too aware about quilting until I started working for a social enterprise, a quilting social enterprise in Vietnam, from 2014 to 2016. I was there as a design and marketing mentor, consultant, and I really, really enjoyed. I mean, I love quilts. I love interiors and homewares and um, the tactility of quilts, and also knowing that it's handmade and hand quilted. So I really appreciated, and I also knew about Amish quilts prior as well, and the Japanese quilts, and Indian quilts and things like that. So appreciating it as what it is, I could definitely I could look at it. I didn't want to make them, basically. Didn't know too much about the process of making them. While I was in Vietnam, I was more interested in researching about natural dyes and different textiles and things like that that could be incorporated into the quilts made by Mekong Quilts. So we were working with the ethnic minorities of the Northern Highlands of Vietnam using antique and vintage Hmong textiles, which are naturally dyed and also hand woven. So it wasn't actually until I then we came back to Australia in 2017, and we were based in Tasmania. I did a lot of natural dyeing while I was in Tasmania because I had the space and the time. Um, at the end of it, I had all of these textiles. So I still hadn't really thought about making quilts yet.
Yeah.
I had all these textiles that I dyed, and I was like, what do I do with them? And then it was like, oh, hang on. Well, why don't you just try and make a quilt? Because when I was in Vietnam, I was more, it wasn't a hands-on position as in I was actually physically making. It was more about coming up with new designs and new styles and new techniques that could be incorporated into their existing work already. So it wasn't until I had the chance and the time, basically, that I was like, oh, I'll give quilt making a go. And so I did. And I soon after found out about the Quilters of Gee's Bend in America. And that was when I was like, oh, because my very first quilt in 2017 was a sampler quilt that I had made. It took forever and I wasn't really enjoying it because everything was actually cut. Like it was pre-designed. I'd actually designed every single block myself as well because I didn't want to use any existing block already. So But the whole cutting of the fabrics on very particular angles and making sure everything was on grain and making sure everything was on point. I was getting a little bit bored, basically. And then I discovered the Quilters of Gee's Bend, and I realized that there was a completely other way of making quilts.
Yeah.
And it was very intuitive. These quilts are the most phenomenal things I had seen. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to try that,
Yeah.
basically. See how I go by actually just literally being really intuitive and playing around with the textiles that I have rather than choosing textiles for a particular purpose. And it was that, when there's a light bulb moment sometimes where it's like, oh, actually, I really like this. It was when I was making more improv things, just piecing pieces of fabric together, and then the whole process of actually hand quilting as well. I think anything to do with making by hand, I have a very strong affinity with, basically. The motion, the process of actually stitching, hand quilting made me go, oh, actually, this is something that I actually really, really enjoy.
Yeah.
I can do this for really long, extended periods of time. And I also, I started realizing that it was actually really good for me to be focused on something. It grounds me. I was in Tasmania pretty much by myself. My partner was working. We were about 50 k's out of Launceston, north of Launceston, in the very small coastal village with hardly anyone there. And basically it was me and the cows around me and the sheep.
It actually sounds very picturesque and kind of ideal.
No. Don't get me wrong. It was beautiful. I loved the experience. It was just phenomenal. I wish I could go back, in all honesty, but I didn't have anyone there, basically.
But is that what's required to have a discovery?
Absolutely.
Like that space and time and lack of distraction.
Yeah.
It's kind of what is required sometimes to actually make progress on something.
Yes, to spend time by yourself first off, to discover, be able to be. Had I been there and been a person who did not want to discover new things or learn new things or try new things, then I think I would have been felt very, very isolated very, very quickly. Being by myself basically most of the time there. But I was just hooked. I actually remember when I first started studying footwear back in Adelaide, I was hooked on day one. When I started realizing that a quilt doesn't have to be a traditional quilt, I was just like, this is it. This is good. And there's always that element of the home for me, comfort and security. It's first and foremost, that's why I started doing it as well. Being able to use old textiles, but also this really, really strong reminder of comfort and safety.
I'd love to ask you about that. And there's also a thread that we'll get into about upcycling fabrics. But first, because I know for myself with quilts, it's the creative expression and it's the making, but it's very much the fact that they go on beds, that we sleep under them, we have them for years, we put them on top of us if we're feeling sick. My kids sleep under them. That you can't, for me, in that practice, you can't separate out the function of them. Maybe one day I'll make them to hang on a wall, but right now it's very much intrinsic in the joy of making them is the result that they're a functional object.
No, I had exactly this. I still have that as well. I find it very difficult to remove the functionality
Yeah.
of of a quilt,
Yeah.
what it actually stands for at the end of the day, because that's what I'm actually drawn to as well. Like in terms of the Australian history of quilts, I mean, it's a very short history, and I guess it derives from a British history of quilt making as well, and embroidery. But the woggers are the ones that I'm really drawn to. So they're really, really utilitarian. They're really basically made for warmth more so than anything else. And it is about upcycling as well, using whatever is available. I actually find resourcefulness a very, very strong creative driver.
That's also a G's Bend philosophy too, is it?
Absolutely.
And that was
Absolutely.
out of necessity of using the
Yeah.
materials that you find yourself surrounded by. Let's have a look at a couple of images of your quilts where you've repurposed. Well, I think you repurpose in all your.
Everything pretty
Yeah,
much. Yeah.
yeah. But let's take a look at a couple of specific works. Now, this one is from your Australian Tapestry Workshop exhibition last year.
This year.
Well, this,
It might have been made last year actually,
yeah.
but the exhibition was on this year. This is all upcycled textiles. It's actually a unfinished quilt top, which I have done the stitching on. So I've actually used I collect textiles. I have been collecting textiles for numerous years now. Whether it's been through traveling or op shops or my own wardrobe, basically. And I collect without really knowing what I'm going to use it for. It's very, very difficult to. It's the complete opposite of designing and selecting materials and colors. Like I said before, I respond to my materials. I use natural dyes quite a bit in my work. So these ones here, there's an indigo piece, and the pink one is avocado stones and skins and eucalyptus leaves. Again, they're both fully upcycled textiles. I don't actually find this one here, Home Hand, is a quilt that I made in collaboration with an Indian designer, Hetal. Unfortunately, I can't pronounce her last name. She's got a fantastic handmade label in India called Raslila, a textiles label. And we exchanged textiles. So I sent her a box of my naturally dyed upcycled textiles, and she sent me a box of the textiles she uses, which is also all of this is actually post-production waste, fashion waste textiles.
I think we have a full
This is the one.
work
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is it was really fun. I really enjoyed this project because I got to work with someone and collaborate with someone. We both created our own works, but using each other's textiles that we would normally use in our own practice. And it was really, really lovely because this is the first quilt that I have made or created that was purely done by hand. Hetel's label Raslila, everything they do there is done by hand. So all the seams on the clothing are done by hand. So I wanted to kind of give a nod and make something without using my machine. And it was such a revelation that I was hand quilting before this, but now I do so much more by hand. To the point,
by hand as well.
I do sometimes.
Yeah.
I collect. I know that a lot of people who are makers, especially textile people who work with textiles will save a lot of scraps because we don't know what to do with them, but we don't want to throw them away because we know how precious it is. I keep, like, I've got all these little jars, and normally people, I don't, and they are scraps that are like millimeter small, tiny. So I'm really into crumb piecing. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, so we've used a few. I probably should explain a few of the terms we've used.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Firstly, we have quilting, which is the process of bringing your quilt sandwich together. So that's the top, the batting or the wadding in the middle, and the backing. And quilting is what we call the actual stitching that brings the sandwich together. Then I mentioned the word piecing, which is what you do when you create the quilt top. It's the thing that looks like the patchwork. It's bringing all the pieces of fabric together into one unified top. And then you mentioned crumb quilting. Do you want to explain what that is? And that's a tiny to use for crumb quilting.
Tiny. That's why I started doing it, because I didn't know what to do with these tiny little pieces. And I also keep the ends of threads, of sewing threads and quilting threads and things like that after I finish hand quilting or doing hand embroidery, just in case.
Yeah.
Crumb piecing, is
We're just going to show something, and by the look.
Yeah, I made this little book that's got examples, and I don't know how detailed, but these are some tiny little pieces, basically. So crumb piecing is essentially just patchwork, piecing together normal patchworks, 1/4 inch seam. Some of my crumbs will not make a 1/4 inch seam. Some of my crumbs will be like, I don't know, maybe 5 mil, basically. So when I do crumb piecing, they're generally not for big quilts or functional quilts, because the seams are quite small. I do. What was that? Sorry.
Potentially fragile too if they're
absolutely
the edge.
So I do it more so when I'm working for my hands, basically. I always have, this is the thing that I do when I don't know what to do. I pick up a little bit of fabric and I pick up a needle and thread and just start piecing.
It's quite mindful too.
Absolutely.
And that you've got a whole lot of little pieces and you're just joining them and making something bit by bit. There's no plan. It's quite great.
It is about the process at the end of the day. I also know that I've put so much energy into the energy that's been put into the actual textile in the first place as a commercial textile. And then my energies of actually discovering that textile as an upcycled textile, and then using the natural dyes on top, and then producing whatever work I've done with it, to have this all these small scraps to then throw it away. I'm just like, oh my God. I don't know. I find it a bit, I'm too scared to throw it away, so I have to do something with it.
Same. I've had a philosophy of not throwing. I don't throw anything. I don't want my craft or art practice to contribute to landfill ultimately.
Absolutely. Same here.
So I do the same thing, Phong, and I've got a large scrap storage. It sounds more organised than it is. The bits that I use for crumb, and over time I'm just making blocks, and then everything else goes in a sort of tiny scrap bin, and at some point might become a cushion fill or a dog fill, and hopefully nothing goes in the bin.
That's my philosophy.
Even if it's going to break down.
Yeah. That's we share the same kind of sentiment, basically.
And it's a similar question for the upcycling and repurposing. Is it a sustainability measure,
It
or is
is.
it that these fabrics?
It's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's,
history.
I mean, well, just working in the fashion industry, when I was working in commercial footwear for a moment, I was working in an organization that was vertically integrated, based in Adelaide. I was working as a footwear designer for the footwear label, but they also had, I think it was like 4 or 5 fashion labels as well, and they were producing collections every month.
Mm.
So we're talking about 12 collections at 30 to 40 pieces per collection every single month of the year.
Wow.
Um, the footwear was not as crazy in terms of we were doing 4 collections a year, but I was just like, this is crazy. And I don't actually, that's why I had my own footwear label, and I was doing handmade footwear to start off with anyway, because I didn't want to be part of the commercial industry in the first place. It just so happened that I kind of did it. And going to Vietnam, working for a social enterprise was my way of going, I'll take a step away from that industry. And it's environmental, it's sustainability, it's the resources in terms. There's just so much fabric.
Yeah,
There's I don't understand, and funnily enough, I actually start to think as well that within the art and craft making process for people, I don't know whether a lot of people think about it as
mm.
well.
Mm.
Whether they think, I mean, I know other quilters and they do buy commercial fabrics because they're basing it off a design and colorways and things that they want specifically. I just, for me personally, I just find it very, very difficult to work that way.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and also, you know that whole thing where sometimes things just seem like one person can't do, what can I contribute basically as a single person?
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
for me, I also do a few workshops as well, hand stitching improv workshops.
yeah,
And for me, it's very small gesture, but it's enabling other people, especially beginners as well, and people who have never picked up a needle and thread before, to be able to, it's kind of like to be able to do something and use textiles, and both for mindfulness, but also to realize and understand that to repair clothing, or because I use a lot of repair techniques in my actual work as well. So it doubles up as both functional kinds of things. I use textiles that have a life or have had a life, as well as
yeah,
nice, clean, upcycled textiles. I'm not too scared of stains and imperfections,
yeah,
because they have a life or have had a life. They bear silent witness, I guess, to all of these interesting stories that we know nothing
yeah.
about.
I was wondering if it was also that, and that's one of the things about um, clothes or
Absolutely,
fabrics
yeah,
in the home is they've lived a life, or they've wrapped themselves around people,
yes,
or seen drama that we will never know
absolutely,
about. Like the walls have ears, the fabrics have.
yeah. That's
I was
exactly it.
wondering if it was equally that, as well as the sustainability.
That
Um,
has a lot to do with it
yeah,
as well. And you find so many beautiful, beautiful hand embroidered
yeah,
fabrics in the op shops.
yes,
Someone has taken all of that time
yeah,
to do these works, and then it ends up in the op shop for $1.
yeah, yes,
which
which is great, a great find.
it breaks my heart, but it is also a great find. Yes, absolutely.
No, but at least you're giving them a second life and you're turning them into something very keepable.
Yeah, I hope so.
Somebody at some point decided that it wasn't keepable, but I think you're turning it into something keepable through your
I
work.
hope so. I really hope so.
Yeah.
It just extends the life. So there is that sustainability element to it. There's a keepsake element to it as well that I actually, even though it's not part of my history, in terms of someone making it, it's still very relevant because it's still a very beautiful embroidery or something that I can use within my own work as well and extend the life of it, and hopefully other people can enjoy it as well.
Yeah. Yep. Amazing. What are you working on at the moment?
Well,
An award?
I'm actually working on a quilt top.
Right.
I'm not 100% sure what yet. I actually never tried to work. I'm a kind of anxious person when it comes to having lots of things. So I've actually got a diary and also use my calendar on my phone as well to make sure that I don't miss any deadlines or anything important. I try to be ahead of whatever I need to be in terms of making things. At the moment, I'm trying. This is the unfortunate thing about how my practice has evolved, I guess, is that a lot of the things I'm working on now are based on projects that I'm engaged in, as opposed to the pure joy of and creativity of making and experimenting. I miss it. I miss it a lot. I hope that I will be able to carve time to actually do a lot more experimenting and coming up with different ideas, because there's way more ideas in the head than there are hours in the day and physical time to make it. But I'm working on a quilt top at the moment, which is...
Phong is rotating his
Yeah.
to show more of the studio.
Yeah.
And
So
we'll link
I'm
to an
working on...
image of this.
Yeah.
Wow.
The stripy quilt. So that was actually something that I started in Tasmania in 2017.
Yeah.
And I've gone back to it. Actually, my partner I made this quilt top. My partner said it was too busy. So this was 2017 when we came back from overseas. And I put it aside. At the time, I wasn't very confident, basically, in terms of what I was doing. I put it away, and I actually, when we came back, I moved into the studio probably about 2 years ago. When I moved, I found it in pieces, basically.
Wow.
So I've re-pieced it back together. And I'm now... It may sit there for 3 months. It may sit there for another month or another week. I'm not 100% sure because I'm still kind of deciding on what the quilting will be.
Yeah.
Because I'm not 100% sure just yet. Sometimes it comes really quickly in terms of, yes, and I would like to be able to enter it into QuiltCon for next year. Yeah, next year.
Yeah. We had
so that's kind of
on this year. Is that right?
Yes, that was the home hand.
Oh, right.
Yeah, that one's been traveling around for quite a while, actually.
Wrong one.
So
which one? This one.
That's the one. Yeah. So that was made for a exhibition that was in Melbourne last year called In Conversation, and then I entered it into QuiltCon this year. Yep, 2025. and it was selected to go traveling basically as the QuiltCon Selects exhibition. So it actually came back to Australia for the Australasian Quilting Convention in Melbourne at the beginning of this year, and it's been doing the rounds over in America.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
For those who aren't familiar with QuiltCon, it's the annual Modern Quilters Guild huge show in the US, and it's quite competitive to get your quilts into that show from what I see on Instagram. And there's a whole QuiltCon rejects thing that happens too. So it's one of the more prestigious shows, I guess.
Yeah, it's fun.
Would that be accurate, Phil?
Yes, absolutely.
Giving you the opportunity to toot your own horn.
I'm not very good at tooting my own horn, unfortunately. But yes, it's actually the Modern Quilt Guild is kind of how I evolved when I first moved back to Melbourne. I kind of heard about it, but I wasn't 100% sure what it was. And it wasn't until I moved back to Melbourne and then actually met some other members of the guild and realized that it was quite a big thing, especially in America as well. And I don't know, it's been very interesting. Because when I first started making quilts, I was very scared of showing anyone, basically. So to enter, nowadays I'm not as scared. I'll show anyone any of my work, but to enter, I've been fortunate. I've entered twice, and I've been juried into the exhibition twice. Yeah. So it's I don't know what it is, but it's been beneficial for me, and I really enjoy it because it is a different take on quilting as well, in the sense that it's a lot. While I'm not a modern quilter, really, they've been a lot more receptive and welcoming.
You're not a modern quilter?
I don't think so. I don't really. The funny thing is, I asked someone the other day what it means. I wasn't even sure myself.
Well, you're a maker, we know that.
Yeah, that's
a modern maker, perhaps.
It's easier to say that, actually.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what those. I mean, I think it's clear whether or not one is a traditional quilter.
Yeah.
And I know that we probably
don't fall into the traditional.
That, but yeah, I'm curious about that. Yeah.
I thought it was when I first heard about it, I thought it was actually talking about contemporary quilting. So but it's not either. So I feel I still find, I don't know, I find it all quite blurry in terms of because when you say to someone, "Oh, I make quilts," I don't know if you say that often to people when they ask you what you do.
Yeah.
But the general layperson, especially in Australia, their general response, unless they're familiar with what's happening within the fashion and design, and art world, contemporary art world, they generally go, "Oh, that's what my grandma makes," or "That's what my mum used to do." So to break down, it's only when I show them work that they kind of understand what I do, because I kind of find it difficult to explain to people as well sometimes.
Yeah, it's sort of I do find there's when I make if I can show people and nerd out and show the work and show that it's not a particular
Yeah.
it helps, but you sort of get this.
It's always that funny little,
Yeah.
or else it's
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there's well, and maybe it's a thing in Australia too, just because there's not that people don't have a quilt that they were
yeah,
given by their grandmother that
yeah,
is the most precious thing in the world as much as
yeah,
in other places. So the value of it perhaps is a bit different. Or people it's this goes hand in hand with the question of like, oh, will you make me one?
yes, absolutely, absolutely. If you'd like to pay $3,000,
Yeah,
sure.
I know.
Yes, they don't. I think that's, but you know what? It was the same when I was making shoes as well.
Mm.
Um,
Was it?
yeah, in terms of people's perceptions of, oh, it can't be that difficult. Like,
Yeah.
can you make me some shoes? And then when the quotes go out, they realize that, oh, actually, it's not as, you can't click your fingers basically,
Yeah.
and have whatever it is there and then.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I find it with the same with textile work now as well. It's very nice for people to say, oh, I really love your work. I really love it. But when it comes down to commissioning work,
Yeah.
or purchasing work, I actually find there has to be an emotional response to the work
Mm.
rather than, because when you have an emotion to it, you are more likely to keep the work, but also value it and value the and actually pay
Yeah.
the price for it as well.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, so there, yeah, I still find it very difficult in terms of settling on like a monetary
Mm.
price for my works.
Yeah.
They fluctuate a lot. Um, and it's actually, I find it very rare that unless they know, even if they're educated about it, it may just go in and then go out the other ear anyway.
Yeah.
But unless they actually understand the true value of what goes into making a quilt or making
Mm.
anything really,
Yeah.
people don't really associate the value.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I find it really annoying, really.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I guess it's like a lot of art forms
Yeah,
that a truly magnificent quilt doesn't show, and it's a bit like you're like circling back to the beginning of the conversation, it does, a really well made quilt doesn't show
yeah,
how much work,
yeah.
because the idea is to make it beautifully resolved, and to look
And that's what people
like a
see at
ballet
the end.
dancer, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It
So
doesn't show hours.
I like making my best kind of scenario is to make for other people. I mean,
Mm.
in an ideal world, I would be doing what I'm doing, but be able to give away everything
Yeah.
I make.
Oh, wow.
Um, that would be the most ideal world for me because I can continuously. I think this is what well, it drives me
Mm.
to. I can probably, even if I wasn't doing this as a, I guess, a job. I don't like the word job either, but um, I would still be making
Yeah.
regardless.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there comes a point in time when you have so much stuff that you make that you would like it to be out in the world somehow
Yeah.
and given homes to people who actually really value it and really love it. And there's a lot of people who just can't afford it, basically,
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Yeah.
We don't live in an ideal world, unfortunately. So, but I do try to, I mean, all the presents I give to friends and family are made by my hands. Um,
No.
and yeah, I don't know. I'd love to be able to do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not going to happen, but I would love to be able to just be able to continually make things and be able to give them away.
That's incredibly generous, Fong.
I won't be doing it, Joe.
And you've been really, really generous in this conversation as well today. It feels like a nice end point, but we do have one segment that we like to do at the end of our Friday feature artist interviews, which is called Every Artist Must. And so the way that it works is I start a sentence and I say, every artist must something. And you repeat that and you finish the sentence with a single word or a spontaneous thought. It can be quite brief. Are you game for our
Yeah, let's do it.
every artist must? Okay. Fong. Every artist must own.
Every artist must own their own conviction.
Mm. Every artist must create.
Every artist must create every day.
Every artist must avoid.
Every artist must avoid social media if they can.
Every artist must learn.
Every artist must learn from each other.
Every artist must remember.
Every artist must remember to stay curious.
And every quilter or stitcher must.
Every quilter or stitcher must continue to quilt and stitch for the rest of their lives.
Oh, I love it. That was really impressive. We've been talking for more than an hour and you were just able to smash.
I can. Talking about making textiles and with someone who understands and appreciates it and is a maker it's the best time for me. Because it may seem like I'm in a silo generally in my own studio or on social media. I'm following other makers and other designers and other quilters. So it seems like there's lots of people doing it, but I actually don't think there is as big as I think. So to be able to, I wouldn't be able to have this conversation normally with friends. And so I really, really enjoy and appreciate being able to do this.
Oh, thank you. And likewise, this is such a joy. The bonus for me is you're a quilter, so we can talk. We can talk on those terms, but also I just loved hearing about your story and your ideas, and we took a lot of different turns in this conversation, but I think it's just given such a rich perspective on your practice, but also what it's like being a maker at the moment. So I really appreciate it, Fong. Thank you so much. And you are now part of our little community of Take Two friends, which is really exciting. So I hope we can keep in touch. And
absolutely. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me on.
My pleasure.
It's been my pleasure.
Okay. Thank you so much, Fong.
Thanks, Joe. Bye.
All right.